Hey folks, welcome back to Not Work Tabletop. It's me, John, and today we are going K47. We are looking at the Totenkorps. Now, some of you may have seen the little short I've got up somewhere. I'm going to point to random directions with my Totenkorps painted in that sort of pinky purple glow style, inspired a little bit by heavy metal. No, not the Games Workshop studio, the animated movie, the sequence called B-52, I think it is, where they have the dead rising and the glow over everything. I thought that was particularly cool. Also some other influences there, and we're going to look at them in just a moment. But we want to talk about the Totenkorps first. Now, when K47 came out, these were released as some of the first plastics they did over the old metals and resins, and I wasn't very interested in Totenkorps. I wanted my K47 army to be a lot of the werewolves, or the Schreckwolfen, the Nachtjäger, the vampires, and that kind of thing. And I still do. I still want it to be that. But we played some larger games, and obviously we were using some of the bolt action miniatures initially to sort of fill out the points and fill out the forces. Well, we had a couple of K47 units, and as things grew and expanded, I decided, what the hell, I'm going to buy one box of the Totenkorps, and I think the spider tanks look really, really good, the Nachtschwerer. And so I picked them up, and you can see them in the short. I'm going to look at them again in a minute. And they've proven a really interesting thing to work with. They really have on the tabletop. There's a lot of tactics, and there's a lot of uses for them. And because they're zombies, a lot of people who haven't faced them before think that they are zombies. You know, we've seen zombies in lots of other games, especially like fantasy games with the undead horde. The zombies are throwaway chaff, and you want the Totenkorps in numbers, but they are not chaff, not really. You are paying elite points for them. It's a couple of 100 points for a full unit of Totenkorps, and you are paying those points for a reason. They are really tough to shift. They are damage value 6+, so you want. They can be killed by conventional firearms, but you really want to pump heavy weapons into the Totenkorps to make them fall over. And of course, their special ability, the Dead Rise, means they are getting back up again. And it's some of these points that I want to talk about, I want to look at the moment as we talk about the core, as we look at the core. It's very, very simple stuff. Obviously, you've got your core Totenkorps guys. There is available now the Totenkorps Medic, which makes them even more resilient, or in theory even the possibility of being even more resilient, because it is basically a 6+ on a d6 to stop them falling over when they're wounded. And of course the Nachtschwerer, is the spider tank that walks around behind them and makes those dead rises all the better. But the thing is, to get after a few games in, and we've played around with things, and yeah, we got some rules wrong. I think in the one video where someone actually pointed out to us in the comments that we got something wrong. Didn't tell us what we got wrong, but yeah, looking at it and then looking at what we've done later, we realised we got rules wrong, and that was one of our first games using a lot of the stuff. So the Totenkorps have Infiltrate, which is really good and really bad, because if they infiltrate, they struggle to get the benefits of having a Totenkorps Medic and the Resurrection Spider Tank. Nachtschwerer. Am I saying that right? Nachtschwerer. And so it's a little bit of a weird one, and what I found best to do, because again, I don't field a Totenrot army. The Totenrot army is a different thing. I haven't had a chance to play with it yet. But for those of you who may not be playing with Totenrot, the full force is basically all being the undead with a couple of the medics and specialist officers. What I found is really, really nice to do is I run 2 units, and we play at 1500 points at the moment. We are going up to 2k. But we play with 1500 at the moment. I play with 2 units of Totenkorps, 2 units of 12, as big as a unit gets. One of them, I will use the Infiltrate rules. In fact, I tend to use the Infiltrate rules for both, because it means I don't have to put them down and sort of show my hand early. Kind of. My opponent's getting a bit canny to how I'm doing it. And that is, you can infiltrate 1 unit. So you can get your zombie boys. Zombie boy, focus, focus. Yeah, there we go. You can get your zombie boys. And you can put them on the table using infiltrate. I'm hoping people know what the infiltrate rule is. It basically means you get to set up almost anywhere you want as long as you're outside of a certain distance away from the enemy gubbins, the enemy guys. And that's great. If you want to challenge an objective, bear in mind the Totenkorps can't capture anything unless they're in Totem Rot, but core Totenkorps, you can't capture a damn thing. But that's fine. You can still challenge for things. You can get into combat. You can cause people a bit of a problem. And I tend to infiltrate one unit of Totenkorps quite deep into the field. If we're playing for objectives, it will go close to an objective, especially if it's a central objective. It's just a central objective. It makes it beautiful. Or I'll put it somewhere really disruptive. And that's where it will almost definitely stay. I'm going to try and give it some cover. Give them cover saves as well. You want to make them as hard to kill as possible because they're really hard to kill, and every extra piece of effort the enemy has to put into killing them, getting them off the table, is a piece of effort that's working in your favour. And I keep looking off to the side. I keep trying to... I've got weird colour things going on. And with that effort, you are forcing their hand ready. You're dictating a flow of the game, and they are great for this. Because the odds are they will stand there and they will take it. And you can use the Dead Rise on them to get them back up. And that unit is where I would recommend using your Axis reroll when you reroll the dice at the end of the round, the Rift dice at the end of the round, to get them back in the game, to keep them constantly keeping pressure on the enemy. Now, the other unit of Totem Rot, because there's two. We have two different units of zombie guys. Two units of zombie guys. Don't know if it's going to focus. Probably not if there's two. If I hide my head, does it focus? Come on. Focus on the close stuff. Nope. Okay. Two units of zombie guys. And two units of zombies. Two units of Totenkorps. What you do is the other unit, the second unit, even though I deploy with Infiltrator commonly, I put it close to where the combat medic and the resurrection spider tank are going to be able to get to. Or possibly even start the next one, because I've seen the enemy deployment now, I know what they're doing, I can put them where I need them to be. But it's very important that you get them close to these two units, because the Natsuera is going to be adding to their Dead Rise. And also, if they're close enough and you can mob an enemy unit with them, as long as they're not just robots. For a lot of British, so I end up chasing command squads. The resurrection tank will do its resurrection thing and bring another unit of Totenkorps onto the table, which is absolutely fantastic. It's beautiful. And don't forget, the spider tanks are highly mobile. All of the walkers are highly mobile, but the light walkers exceptionally so. They tend not to care about a lot of the things that slow most things down. And they're very fast anyway, which is great because they can go climbing over walls where tanks can't. And so they can keep pace with the much slower, ironically, Totenkorps. And it will draw a lot of fire as well. So your Natsuera, there it is. The spider tank. You're going to focus? Come on. Come on, there we go. The spider tank is going to creep in. It's going to creep along with them. There it goes. And give them that support. It's going to, and of course, it's not as good as some things in close combat because its front claws are only as strong as its legs. It's still a whole set of Pen 2 close combat attacks. It can still run through things in the way that vehicles do in K-47. It can make an absolute mess. It can really upset stuff. You can run that through and then get the Totenkorps in behind it, and it will disrupt a whole line, and then the Totenkorps will hit them, and you're almost guaranteed to get your new unit of Totenkorps. It's beautiful. And then you keep your medic. Now, I don't have a medic to show you, unfortunately. I don't own the model yet. I've been doing some other bits with some other models to do for them instead. I'm currently using just an officer model from my bolt action stuff. I do have a medic somewhere in the my German bolt action stuff, but I don't know where he is. He's vanished. But there we go. So you have the one unit deploy infiltrate, far out, 1 unit deploy, probably infiltrate but closer by, and you have your things that make them tougher on the back unit, and then you just try and keep the wandering unit out front in cover, or you get them into combat with something as quickly as possible. You tie it up. And the beautiful thing is assuming you don't get absolutely smashed, if someone's got a walker out there, but it's one of the walkers that don't really have the arm attacks, you can run that unit of 12 Totenkorps into the back walk, into that walker, and it'll get locked in combat. You can lock it in combat, and you can try and grind it, because once it hasn't moved or hasn't had the opportunity to move, once it's done that, then the weight of attacks from the Totenkorps, assuming it doesn't kill too many of you too quickly, the weight of attacks from the Totenkorps can actually cause some damage. Now, we were doing it wrong with the one video where we were doing tough fighters, and I forgot the tough fighters doesn't apply against vehicles. It's what differentiates it from deadly. That was my mistake. But we have played a couple of games since where we've remembered that's how it works. But even so, you go charging in, you might lose a couple of Totenkorps on the way in. If it hasn't got arms, if it's got arms and it's got Overwatch, a bit different proposition. But if you can get them in, and it hasn't got arms, Percival, I'm looking at you, then you can really make a mess of that thing. And if you get like superficial damage on it, you can rack up that superficial damage and really cause it a bad day. And it's an expensive unit to do it with, but it's an expensive unit to do it to. You've got to balance whether it's worth it. But they are a wonderful distraction mechanic. Then in the backfield, you can use them to support and screen the units that you actually are moving up to take objectives with, if you're playing objectives, or whatever your as objective markers or objective buildings, or you will have mission objectives that you need to do certain things for. And they are good for forcing that. They will absolute menace on the battlefield. They will either be ignored to the detriment of whoever's doing it, unless they've got an awful lot of armour. Ignoring the Totenkorps is a bad idea. They've got a lot of armour. Again, you can get them in and weight numbers them down. The downside is you cannot dead rise when you're in close combat. Which leads me on to my next thought with them. Is the Totenkorps, unless you've a reason not to, and I keep looking at the screen, it's a bad habit. The Totenkorps, unless you've a reason not to, is you want to run them as early in your turn process as possible. As early in your turn process as possible. Unless you have a need to do something else. If you need to do that other thing, do the other thing. If you don't have a pressing need to do the other thing, you don't have a anti-tank shot to make, you do not have a combat you absolutely need to get a charge off on, your Shrek Wolfen are going into something, for example. But one of your first priorities in a turn, I think, is run the Totenkorps. Because I've looked at some of the FAQs, I've read through the material, I think I'm fine, and while you cannot use the dead rise if you're in close combat, and you lose the ability to run if your Rift dice is exhausted, there is nothing saying, because you can use the Rift dice on the Totenkorps whenever you want. It seems to just, the wording is just you can use it, and the dead rise, you don't wait to their activation. Now I could be wrong on that, but I haven't seen anything that says I am. That's the thing. So at the moment, I like to run them early, so they can gain ground, and then if they get shot to hell, they get shot to hell, and we spend the Rift dice, and hopefully we can get that Rift dice back. But we are getting the most bang for our buck from the Totenkorps, because we can move them, they're not fast, but we can move them twice as quick as than if we haven't got that Rift dice. I have seen some argument going, oh, if you run them, then you can't use it because you've run, it stops you from running. But that's not what the rule says. That's not how it's worded. It says you are not allowed to give them a run order if the dice is gone. If they've already run for that turn, there's nothing saying you still can't exhaust the dice. There's a whole bunch of things, especially amongst the Axis, where you exhaust the dice doing something that they can't do if the dice is exhausted. So there is stuff out there that's kind of there. Maybe Warlord will turn around and say this is, yeah, if you've already run, you can't do it. But that makes the Totenkorps a lot more vulnerable then. It means that you either never run them, unless you're going into combat, which is fine. I can see the slow shambling horde going across the table or doing something at 4 inches a turn, but then they do become a chunk less useful because there's almost no way they can afford to be ignored at that point. And I don't think that's ever been the intention. Could be wrong. Could be wrong. I'm going to have to ask some of the folks at Warlord if I get the chance to chat to at any point. But my tactics, with my current understanding of the rules, and we all agree down at the local games I play at Worcester War Games, at least those of us that play together, there are other people that also play Konflikt 47. There's a little bit of cross-pollination as people are free on different days, so you do have some smaller groups getting together, is that you can run and still use that regen, because the order's already been given. You just can't then run them again, which means that they might not be able to run for a couple of turns because the dice is exhausted, and then they do become vulnerable. But I like to run them up early, save that dice for a solid regen roll, or dead rise roll, I should say, and then that means your Totenkorps are going to get across the table a lot faster, a lot quicker, especially early on. If they get hit by early anti-infantry or early good anti-infantry fire and a lot of shots, and they take a lot of casualties before they've moved, then you kind of want to burn that dead rise. Now, it could be argued, and this is the one thing we don't do, it could be argued that you could run them as part of the dice activation and then spend it, because I've just said about already giving them the run order. We don't play it that way. We don't play it that way. That is the one thing that we went, yeah, that doesn't feel quite right. Which is weird, because obviously if it's only one dice activation away, why can't you do it one way or the other? Maybe you can. Again, it's not what the wording says. It does not say if they've been given a run order then they cannot use this. It just says once you've exhausted the dice, you cannot then provide them with the run order. I think if it's part of the same dice activation, then yeah, that's where it gets weird. You can't activate them to run and use the thing in the same click. You'd have to wait for something else to happen, and then it's a bit of an odd one. But that's how we tend to mess around with it. Is we will have the one unit advance up the table, infiltrate high up the table. They don't have to do a lot of running. They're there mostly to distract things, get in the way, get shot, get charged, possibly lock something in combat. Especially if they've if they've got the option to kill it and then use their dice to regenerate. And then the second unit with the medic and the Nachschwerer will advance behind them. He'll come up behind them. There he is again. Comes across. I really love this model, and will provide all of those wonderful buffs to keep the the Totenkorps rolling. And make them a massive threat on the table, because they're not cheap. Again, it's a couple of 100 points for a full unit of those guys. Your medic costs officer rates, and then you've got the tank itself, which also is not the cheapest unit on in the game, and a good anti-tank round will take it out. I tried to keep them a little bit hidden, abuse the fact that they can go over cover to sit them behind cover. I try not to forget that he's got a machine gun, because I do. The flamethrower version is hilarious if you're not using it to support the core, but if you're using the core, then you really want one of those for if you have a big hit, and then you can roll that dice and they all come back up. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. So that's the basics of what you do with it. But then you've got target priority. Target priority. Because, again, once you're in close combat, you can only kill things with them in close combat, and once you're in close combat, they are not regenerating. The dead are not getting back up. The dead are not rising once you've got them in close combat. And I'm sorry for scratching my nose. It's really polleny again today when I'm recording a bunch of these videos. It's been a polleny weekend. So you want to think about where you need to put the damage in. Where can they hurt? Now, obviously, anything with meat, anything that is 6 or lower to damage, so typically not power armor, anything at all that you can get them into, you can do damage with. Or you can try and hold in place as something else and show up and do damage. The Totenkorps can do a lot of damage with tough fighters, but as we discussed, that's useless going against vehicles. You can rely on weight of numbers to get that done. They are fearless, which removes some of the problems to do with vehicles. And they are fanatical. They will fight again after death. After the round resolves, not fight after death, fight after the round resolves, but they will not accept death. So if they would normally die from being beaten in combat, they will hit again, which is great. And then once that concludes, they will stand there and fight more in consecutive rounds, which is interesting and fun. But hopefully you'll be winning some fights with the Totenkorps, both the weight of numbers, the difficulty to be hit. These guys are going to stand up to most basic power armoured soldiers, and do some work. They can stand up to even some slightly heavier power armoured soldiers and do some work with tough fighters, which is nice. But you really want to be picking the targets, especially for the one that's got the tank accompanying, because if you can get the kills off and destroy units, and if there's spotters out there, if there's like small scout units out there, if someone's foolish enough to put a small unit near the Totenkorps with a resurrection tank standing nearby, kill it, because that gives you more core. And that's the terrifying thing with the core. If you can kill it and the tank is nearby, you are raising another unit on the table. That is another problem for the enemy to have to think about. It's adding D6 units, and it isn't capped by looking at how much the old unit was. I've looked at that as well, and I haven't spotted that anywhere in the FAQ. Now, we had a discussion about that. Maybe it should be. Maybe it should be capped at how much the old unit was, the unit you've just destroyed. Because you go and kill like a spotter, which is what, one guy, and then you roll a 6 and get 6 Totenkorps. Doesn't feel entirely right. But it doesn't say no. So we haven't really had it come up very much. I'm mostly going into Galahad platoons, so they've got a number of guys. I've only got 6 additional core models before I'm using random zombies from other games. So it hasn't really come up. But again, it maybe needs a bit of thinking about. But your targeting is key. You do one or two things with the Totenkorps. You either go after the flesh bags, where you can try and raise more Totenkorps, or you use them to absolutely gum up the works and whatever the other side is trying to do. At the moment, I use them mainly as cannon fodder against automated infantry, Mark 1s and Mark 2s, which will absolutely, in theory, pile damage on the core. But then I have the guns to return fire that aren't being shot at. I like to run them into, except the Percival. Lock the Percival up, because once the Percival's locked in combat, it's not going anywhere. Because some people said to me, "Oh no, but you can just move out of combat." No, it can't. You can only move through the infantry if you've got your charging run-up. You have to be able to charge. And you can't charge if you are locked in combat. And it says under the walkers section, now again, I could be wrong, but I haven't found it in the FAQs that says I am, that it gets locked in combat. Combat with walkers, if you basically draw down twice against a walker, and with Fearless, you've either won or you've drawn, because you don't accept defeat. Then it's locked in combat. That's what it says. So it's really good for gumming up gun walkers like the Percival. Again, I could be a little bit wrong on that one. I'm going to go back and read it again and look through some stuff, because as nice as Konflikt 47 is in so many respects, there are a couple of occasions you look at the rules and go, does that mean this or this? And I understand sometimes the confusion there. But the way I see it is you either gum up something big, or you use it to take out other infantry and then try and use the tank to generate more Totenkorps. Which then again you send off to go and do whatever you want. And you can also sit them in and around objectives, make it really hard for enemy units to get to your scoring units. These are wonderful skirmish screeners. These are fantastic skirmish screeners. And then you put your scoring units actually into an objective or onto an objective, or to pick up the thing they're running away with while the core are in the way. Or you can use it to, again, completely go up the enemy scoring. If they're trying to get to the objective, and the core is sitting in and around it and on it, they can't capture, but they can absolutely mulch things that are trying to, or just get in the way, and therefore, challenge that objective, contest that objective. And they're fantastic for that. And again, with the infiltrate, makes it really, really easy to pull that off. Because you just need to move them to position, sit them there, and then the enemy's either got to stand there and shoot them, or they need to charge into Totenkorps. Which means they're going to want to be sending tough fighters of their own in, that also want to be substantially tough infantry. So yeah, they're looking at power armour, realistically. Now, I know the new automated formations expanded the actual gear that's automated infantry. Yeah, I'm talking automated because I fight the automated a lot. 2 opponents, both have British automatons. And I'm the bad guy. And that's they can now get tough fighters as well, but they tend not to have the numbers, and tough fighters with numbers is great, and the core have the numbers. So there we go. Just a little thought piece about the Totenkorps. I was planning to sort of swing around and show more bits of the my core again. They haven't really changed since the last time I've shown you them, but yeah, those are my thoughts on the Totenkorps. A little bit of a word on the paint job, as you may have noticed. In fact, what we're going to do is I'm going to turn the camera around and let you guys have a look at the paint job again. So here we go. Here's my Totenkorps. We're going to zoom in a little bit. So there's the tank. Things are a mess around the working desk at the moment, but here's the tank. There's the core. There's the infantry. And while I've got some, if you actually check out it's called Not Work. I think it's still called. I think it's called Not Work Tabletop as well on my Facebook group, which I believe is called Not Work Tabletop now. Was Not Work Gaming. There are some images, and I'm going to do a gallery of some of the stuff that I've painted. I'm not a fantastic painter, but I do have some moments. And the one thing with a lot of my World War II and Weird War stuff is I don't like going over detailed on it. I do not like going over detailed on them because I don't know, there's something about some of the contrast filming that when you see it, when they did the movies for it, and then you look at the actual vehicles themselves, obviously people, when they were painting these things, they were not treating them as great works of art. They were functional machines. These were functional machines. Ignore the messing about. There's battle mechs over there, and there's biscuits. And they were just done thusly, and that's why, like on this, I've just gone for a little bit of hand shading and some other bits, but it's just a spray job I've done on there. Now, I might go in and do some more with it, but when you sort of look at it as a whole, you've got glowy zombies. You've got this sort of faded grey, white, things that mentally suggest medical colours of the spider tank, and then the red going to purples and pinks along it as well, just over essentially a black base and a grey base, and not a lot else. And yet for me, it works so much better than if I'd spent loads of time painting it in, like I've done some other bits and pieces, and I'm finding this with a lot of things, my Horus Heresy stuff as well. But there's another quick look at the Totenkorps. So yeah, thanks for stopping by, folks, and thanks for listening to my little ramble about how I use the Totenkorps, and have a quick look at the models at the end. We have got more K47 stuff upcoming. I'm supposed to be having a battle in the near future again. It's going to be more points. I'm probably going to try and do a bit of a battle report for that. I'm going to try and make sure I've got as much stuff as possible as painted so it looks best on the tabletop. And we've got some other things coming as well for K47. We've also got some experimental units coming up for K47, where I've grabbed a few oddities from a few places and given them rules. So we will have... in fact, you know what? We're going to get her onto screen. She's not painted yet, but you may have seen from Bolt Action. I'm going to come off the green and onto my grey. This particular character, who has a couple of different names on the packaging and other bits and pieces, but there she is. She is she's an Axis officer, and you've got this much smaller than a Shrek Wolf and Werewolf. And my thoughts for this, well, we'll talk about them later, but I'm planning on painting her up and coming up with a special character rule and things for her. And we've got some things going on for the British as well, where I thoroughly intend for the British Museum to have a thing or two to say about this, some of this riff stuff that's going on. So thanks for stopping by. So thanks for stopping by, folks. It's been lovely to talk to you today about the Totenkorps, couple of tactics and some other odds and ends. Please like, subscribe. There is a Ko-fi link on the channel, and if you would like to donate anything, it's literally a couple of quid. It would sort of help this channel going forwards. Muchly appreciated. I can make better quality stuff. I can dedicate more time to doing stuff potentially. And investing in other equipment and bits and pieces as well. But hey, we're going to talk more Konflikt 47, and we've got other things coming up. Remember, folks, it's not work, it's tabletop. Like, subscribe, we'll catch you later. Bye-bye.